And actually, when he said half, it doesn't really mean half. It's like it means like it's such a significant part of the faith that without it, the faith is not complete. So, having said that, marriage is the principle which makes legal procreation. And what could be more important than the procreation of the human race? The building of the starting of a human family.
인류에서 출산은 가장 중요하다고 할 수 있습니다.
Okay, the human family, which is the center of the community, human community. So, in this regards, we should not take the issue of marriage lightly. We should not review the issue of marriage like it is like, you know, inshallah, if I can get a wife, inshallah, if I can get a husband.
이런 식으로 가볍게 여기면 안 됩니다.
No, mashallah, tabarakallah, you must get a husband. You must get a wife. You must be thinking like that. Once you enter the level of your life where you become responsible to be thinking about, you know, your own maintenance, your own school, your own direction, having your own responsibility in life. At that time, you have to be thinking about marriage, because if you're not thinking about marriage, then what happens is that the normal physical attractions, dynamics are going to kick in. For girls, it might be 12, 13, 14. For guys, it might be 13, 14, 15. And maybe some people might ask, well, why is it a little bit slower for the guys? Because girls are simply faster than the boys. That's it. And why? That's not our subject today. Just to let you know that most
왜 남자가 여자보다 느린지는 오늘의 주제는 아닙니다.
cases, girls know much more about what they want and who they want before the guys do. And so young people should start thinking about marriage, you know, when they enter high school.
네, 젊은 사람들은 고등학교 입학할 때쯤이면은 결혼에 대해서 생각해야 합니다.
They should be thinking about marriage. Girls are going to be thinking about boys, and boys are going to be thinking about girls, regardless of what their parents say. Doesn't matter whether they're niqabi, hijabi, whether they're muttaqi, you know, whether they're mutawwi', or they come from a good family, bad family. Doesn't matter. The physical issues, the psychological issues, the social issues are going to drive them towards wanting to be with the opposite sex.
그 사람들 출신 배경에 상관없이 어느 나이에 되면은 이성을 바라게 될 것입니다.
So we need to prepare them for that. Even our Prophet ﷺ said, you know, when your girls reach the age of menstruation, make preparations for them. That doesn't mean give them away when they menstruate. Girls can.
네, 사도님께서 여성이 이제 월경할 나이가 되면 준비를 시키라는 말씀을 하셨는데요. 이것은 이제 월경이 되면은 바로 시집을 보내라는 얘기는 아닙니다.
Start menstruating at 10, 11, 12 years old. Doesn't mean that give them away or prepare them for marriage.
네, 그때 바로 시집 보내야 되는 건 아니에요.
Doesn't mean that. It just means that that's a sign for the parents to begin programming them,
네, 그때 되면은 부모가 이제 아이들을 교육을 해야 된다는 신호입니다.
preparing them. Seeding the ground or the soil for them about this important issue. For boys, a father, he knows when his son is entering that area.
네, 아들의 경우는 아빠가 이제 잘 알 수 있습니다.
The father will know, especially early in the mornings. The father will know when his son's voice starts to change. The father will know, you understand me, in many different ways. So the father and the mother have to be on point to watch for these things. And when they watch for those things, they need to start preparing those children for leadership, for responsibility. You know, we know that the companion of the Prophet ﷺ, his name was Zayd, who was the son of Usama, who was the son of Zayd, radiallahu anhuma. You know, he was chosen by the Prophet ﷺ to be the head of the military army, the whole military. When he was 15, the Prophet ﷺ selected him, and when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, he was 16, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was 16, and he was the head of the Jaysh. This means he was a man. He was able to assume leadership. So then what about marriage? Marriage is very important, and it's not something that should be casually looked at or delayed unnecessarily by the parents and procrastinated upon by the young people.
How can parents be part of their child's marriage journey while still allowing them to choose their own partner?
Parents got to keep it real, not cultural. You know, your culture, the geography or the topography or, the place where you were born, your language and your cultural dynamics and all of that there, your tribe, your people, your language, the temperate, your history and all those things, they do matter. But they should not be overridden by the normal inclinations that young people have. So therefore, a mother and a father need to think about when they were 15 and 16, if they can. And not think about being mom and dad all the time. You're not mom and dad. You happen to be mom and dad, but there was a time when you was not mom and dad. You had a mom and dad. So you need to think about that time and think in reality. When I say keep it real, go inside your daughter's room, mothers, and sit on her bed and try to think about her, how she feels when she's going to school, how she feels when she comes back to school, how she's talking, how she's looking, her temperament, her behavior, her manners, how she's looking. You gotta be able to anticipate almost, you gotta be able to transcend your age to become like her and start thinking and make
트랜스젠더가 아니고 이제 그 아이의 입장에서 생각을 해봐야 된다는 얘기입니다.
preparations for her. And dad, you gotta think the same thing. Watch your son when he goes to school and when he comes back home, if you happen to be there. Talk to your son like a friend, like his homeboy. Walk with your son. Drive past and see how he's interacting with his friends. Look at his clothes. See how his clothing has changed from when he was 10 to now he's 13. Check his voice. His manner. Look around his room. You can smell his body. You can see, he's a different guy. And you got to take the time to do that. And you got to sit in his room and imagine you're being him if you can. And you got to make preparations for him as a friend, not as a father. We're not talking.
아버지로서 준비해야 되는 게 아니라 낯선 사람으로서 아들을 위해서 준비해야 됩니다.
Regulating, not talking about setting rules and boundaries, telling them what it's like this, it's like that, this is what you're gonna do, this is what you can't do. Well, you can do that, but you got to learn to do that from the back seat.
네, 우리가 하는 말은 규제를 하거나 어떤 것을 제한하는 얘기를 하는 거 아닙니다. 물론 그런 것도 할 수 있지만 그런 거는 뒤에서 이제 숨겨진 채로 해야 됩니다.
If you're really smart and sensitive in the world that we're living in, because guess what? The children that are 13 years old and they got a phone, they got Wi-Fi, they are at least 5 years faster than they was before there was phones and Wi-Fi. So be fair, be just, be nice, be sensitive. Put the culture to the background.
문화를 뒤로 빼버리세요.
If you're able to. And if you can't put the culture to the background, you're going to cloud everything. You're going to cloud the reality.
네, 만약에 문화를 완전히 제껴버릴 수 없다면은 배경에 두시고 최대한 흐리게 만드세요.
With the cultural issues. And you're going to cloud your relationship with your children by setting too many rules and standards and all that. They know your mom, they know your dad, they know their rules, they know what Islam says already. You don't got to keep on playing that part. What you got to do now is be wise, be sensitive, be resourceful, learn to be more friend than mom and dad before they leave you. Because children are leaving the parents faster nowadays. When I mean leave you, maybe they're going to be inside your house, but they're already gone. So mom and dad, you got to think about these things. May Allah make it easy for you.
How can we as a Muslim community do a better job preparing our youth for healthy and happy marriages?
Well, first of all, we got to think about what happens outside the masjid. We got to stop playing
네, 성원 밖에서 일어나는 일들을 생각해야 됩니다.
this masjid game. This
마스지드 게임을 중단해야 됩니다.
masjid role. How are we going to be inside the masjid? Practicing the sunnah inside the masjid. Saying all the right things inside the masjid, crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's, inside the masjid. قال الله سبحانه وتعالى وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, and the fiqh of this and the fiqh of that, and the aqidah, and the tafsir and the rules and the regulations and the scholar said this and the scholar said that. You know, all that's good in the masjid.
네, 마스지드 안에서는 모든 좋은 것들이 일어날 수 있습니다.
But what happens outside the masjid? And I mean immediately when they come outside the masjid, some of the young people, they already Wi-Fiing or hooking up while they're in the mosque.
네, 마스지드에서 나오자마자 그렇게 진실되게 알라의 말씀 배우던 젊은이들이 와이파이를 키면서 이제 다른 이성과 접촉을 하고 이런 것들을 심심찮게 볼 수 있어요.
When they step outside the mosque, they going at it. They're going to meet with whoever they want to meet with. Could be like around the corner. And mom and dad, guess what? Your children no longer got to go uptown, downtown, cross town. They ain't got to go nowhere to meet their honey if they got one. The girl.
네, 여자친구가 만약에 남자친구가 있다면은 뭐 어디든 가서 만날 수 있습니다.
Something interesting in case you don't know what that means. You know, the girls, they ain't got to go nowhere outside. They can be talking with who they want to talk with, interacting with who they want to interact with, right in front of you.
당신 바로 앞에서 당신 자식들이 이성과 대화할 수 있다니까요.
And they know how to do it. There's software, they can do it. So if you ask them, let me see who you're talking to, they know how to switch it, you understand me, right? From TikTok to something else, or to Snapchat, or back to TikTok, or whatever they're doing. They real fast. They got the technology, and they know how to use them tools better than you. So keep it real with your children. You know, we got to build a real community. And brothers and sisters, in case you don't know this, the community is not the people inside the masjid. People is calling that the
머스지드에 있는 사람들이 커뮤니티가 아닙니다.
masjid community. That is not a community. Let's define a community. A community is a geographical area where people live mostly as families, where there are agencies and there are kinds of resources and things all around. You know, there are resources, there are agencies, there are buildings, there's other families with other faiths, and this is the community. That community is led by individuals who are in leadership. In the case of a Muslim community, there's a Muslim leader. That is not the person who's giving the khutbah. That's not the person who's leading the prayer. A Muslim leader is the person who basically holds the responsibility of guiding, teaching.
네, 무슬림 리더는 이맘이나 이런 사람들을 타는 것이 아니라 정말 책임감을 가지고 가르치고 안내하는 역할을 부여받은 사람입니다.
Coordinating and at times commanding the right and enjoining, commanding what's right and forbidding what's wrong and arbitrating and showing people where the resources are. That's a leader. So a leader who has a community responsibility, which is outside of the building, that's something different. In the building, there's a congregation. Outside, there's the prospect for community. So the first thing we got to do is stop faking the moves. Stop acting like we are a community inside of a building. We are not a community. We are a congregation. That's the best you're going to be, a congregation. A group of people who are doing acts of worship together in a building. That's a congregation. Leadership requires a community. And a real community requires real social, political, religious leadership. And if we want to talk about marriage and building a real community, we got to talk about that outside the masjid in the real world.
나는 그냥 개발이라는 거 좀 관심이 있다. 나는 진지하게 개발자를 한번 해볼까? 근데 어떻게 해야 되지?
Why do you think many Muslim youth are getting involved in dating and premarital relationships, often leading to zina?
Yeah, that's happening because, we adults, we living in la-la land. That's what we call it, la-la land. You know, you're reading a whole lot of Quran, you're flipping a whole lot of pages, you're talking a lot of hadith and a lot of religious rhetoric. You got all the clothes, you got all the garments, you got all the tools, that we call religious, okay? But outside the masjid and outside of our buildings, we ain't got the tools. And guess what? Today, our children know where to go. And they can go to wherever they want to go to virtually. Now, if you don't understand what I'm saying, let me keep it real and graphic for you. If girls want to see boys and boys want to see girls, they can see everything right now. And I mean everything. And girls, niqabis, hijabis, they taking their clothes off. You say, oh, not my Fatima? Oh, not my Ahmed? Yeah. Maybe not your Fatima, maybe not your Ahmed, but there are some Fatimas, Aishas, and there are some Abdullahs, they're using TikTok. They're using Snapchat. You know, they're using these tools, and they know how to use them and when to use them for them to do what? Find out what they like and what they want to do. What's the difference? That they know that their mother and father trust them. That they have taqwa, that Allah is seeing them, although they don't see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That they're being given the trust and the amana, okay, and the responsibility. They've held workshops about this issue. You know, so in that workshop, we can talk graphics, we can talk reality. You know, this is not about the masjid, this is not about the imam, you know, this is not a whole lot of fiqh and tafsir and other kind of things that we talk about inside the masjid. This is about what happens on the way to school, what happens on the way back from school, what happens on the job site, what happens when they're going out shopping, when they're inside them places, you know what I'm saying, drinking coffee together, or they're having shisha together, or, you know what I'm saying, what happens in the club and after the club. We got to talk about those things. We got to talk about those curly-head kafirs who's in the high schools that our little hijabi, niqabi girls, they like them. And how them boys don't care nothing about no hijab and no niqab. Them little kafirs, you know, some out there got them little cars, they got their little wheelies out there, you know what I mean? They got some dope, they looking nice, they got the branded clothes on and all out there. And guess what? Our hijabis and niqabis, they are regular girls, and they like some of them boys. They're not going to those boys because of the rules that's there. But guess what? At the right and opportune time, when they might be weak or vulnerable, guess what, Dad? You just lost your daughter. Because you didn't kiss her, because you didn't hug her, because you didn't encourage her, because you didn't bring her no roses, because you didn't ride her in your car, because you didn't talk to her about the real things like men talk. You didn't compliment her. So they got some other dude that's complimenting her, riding her around in the car, you know what I'm saying? Before you know, guess what, Dad? You know, you lost your daughter. And guess what, Dad? Your son, Abdul Rashid, you know, who you preparing for this and that, he's a hafiz of Quran and so forth and so on, because you didn't talk to him about the birds and the bees, you know, about the realities. You know, you didn't get into that and talk to him about that because you were so busy preparing him to be an imam, to be a khatib, to go to Azhar, or to go to the university in Medina, or blah, blah, blah. You've been so busy doing that, you forgot that you're living in America or Australia or Canada. You forgot that at 7 o'clock at night, everything changes in the Muslim world. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to the last lecture I talked about the yellow and about the orange and about the red. If you don't know, let your kids listen to it. They'll tell you, yeah, Dad, that's the way things go. Even if they're not the ones that's there. I guarantee you, 30% of our children, they're not going to be out like that. They're not doing that. Allah bless them, Allah protect them.